Nashville, Tennessee, June 28, 2025, 2:47 p.m. The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly over Nashville, casting long shadows across the concrete expanse surrounding Nissan Stadium. The temperature had climbed to 94 degrees, and the humidity made the air feel thick enough to swim through. Inside the stadium's backstage area, industrial fans whirred constantly, providing little relief from the oppressive heat that seemed to seep through every crack and crevice of the massive venue. Reba McEntire sat alone in her dressing room, staring at her reflection in the illuminated mirror. At 70 years old, she still commanded respect as country music's reigning queen, but today, the face looking back at her seemed older, more vulnerable. Her auburn hair, styled to perfection by her hairstylist 2 hours earlier, framed a face lined with worry rather than the confident smile her fans expected. The Hearts for the Heartland benefit concert had been in the works for 6 months. 75,000 tickets sold in less than 4 hours when they went on sale in January. The proceeds would go to families devastated by the catastrophic tornado outbreak that had torn through Alabama, Mississippi, and Arkansas in April, leaving hundreds dead and thousands homeless. Reba had been the driving force behind the event, personally calling every artist on the lineup, using her influence to create what promised to be one of the most significant charity concerts in country music history. Her phone sat on the counter in front of her, dark and silent now, but the words from the call 10 minutes ago still echoed in her mind like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. Ms. McEntire, this is Jennifer Hayes, head nurse at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. I'm calling about Sarah Bennett. She was brought in by ambulance approximately 45 minutes ago. She's asked me to contact you. The room seemed to tilt slightly as Reba closed her eyes, pressing her palms against the cool surface of the counter. Sarah Bennett. Her best friend, since they were both 9 years old, growing up in rural Oklahoma, 2 ranch girls who dreamed of bigger things while riding horses across red dirt prairies. Sarah had been there for everything, every triumph, every heartbreak, every moment that mattered. When Reba's father died, Sarah had flown to Oklahoma within hours. When Reba's divorce from Narvel Blackstock had shattered her world, Sarah had been the one who sat with her in the darkness, not saying anything, just being present. And now Sarah was in the ICU with what the nurse had carefully described as a severe cardiac event. The prognosis was uncertain. She was stable for now, but the next few hours were critical. A sharp knock on the dressing room door made Reba jump. "Reba, it's Michael, can I come in?" Michael Crawford had been Reba's business manager for 3 years, brought on after she took full control of her career. He was efficient, organized, and generally good at reading her moods. Right now, she didn't want to see anyone, but she also knew she couldn't hide forever. "Come in," she called, her voice steadier than she felt. Michael entered, his typically confident stride slightly hesitant. He was 47, with graying hair at his temples and the perpetual expression of someone mentally running through a checklist. Today he carried a tablet and wore the concerned expression of a man who knew something was wrong, but didn't know what. The press line is set up. Sound check went perfectly. Blake Shelton just arrived and he stopped, finally looking directly at her face. "What's wrong?" Reba turned away from the mirror to face him. "I got a call from Vanderbilt. Sarah's in the ICU." Michael's expression shifted immediately from business mode to genuine concern. He'd met Sarah dozens of times at events, had heard countless stories. "Oh God, Reba, what happened?" "Heart attack. They're saying she's stable but critical. It happened at her home in Franklin. Her neighbor found her collapsed in her garden." Reba's voice cracked slightly on the last word. "She's alone, Michael. Her daughter Emily is on deployment in Germany, and her son David is in Seattle on a business trip. They're both trying to get flights, but neither will be here until tomorrow morning at the earliest." Michael set his tablet down on the nearby couch and moved closer. "What do you need? Do you want me to send someone to the hospital? I can have a car there in 15 minutes with anything she needs. What she needs is someone who loves her sitting beside her bed, Reba said quietly. What she needs is me. The words hung in the air between them. Michael's face showed that he understood exactly what she was implying, and his mind was already calculating the implications. Reba, he began carefully, there are 75,000 people who have tickets for tonight. There are 12 other artists who organize their touring schedules around this date. There are news crews from every major network. The governor is coming. This event is being live-streamed to millions. I know. Reba stood abruptly, pacing across the small room. Don't you think I know that? I organized this whole thing. I called in every favor I had to make this happen. Those families in Alabama and Mississippi and Arkansas are counting on this money. But Sarah, her voice broke entirely now. Sarah is my family, Michael. She's been my family for 61 years. Michael watched her pace, his expression torn. What if we set up a video call? You could talk to her, see her before the show. I can have the hospital arrange it immediately. Reba shook her head. She's sedated. They have her on so many machines. She stopped pacing and wrapped her arms around herself despite the heat. What if she dies while I'm up there singing? What if I'm performing Fancy for the 1,000th time while the person who matters most in the world to me is dying alone? Before Michael could respond, another knock sounded at the door. Ms. McEntire, 5-minute call for pre-show meeting. It was Carrie, one of the production assistants, her young voice cheerful and oblivious to the crisis unfolding inside the dressing room. Michael looked at Reba, waiting for her instruction. Reba took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Tell them I'll be there in 10 minutes. She could hear Carrie's footsteps retreating down the hallway. Michael remained, clearly uncertain whether he should push the issue or leave her alone. I don't know if I can do this, Reba admitted quietly. I've performed through broken ribs, through vocal cord strain, through the flu. I performed 2 days after my father died because the show was for charity and people were counting on me. But this, Michael, I feel paralyzed. Every time I think about walking on that stage, I see Sarah's face. I hear that nurse's voice telling me she's critical. Michael moved to stand beside her, his voice gentle. Sarah would want you to do this show. Everyone keeps telling me what Sarah would want, Reba snapped, then immediately felt guilty. I'm sorry, I know you're trying to help. It's okay to be scared, Michael said. It's okay to be torn, but you have 20 minutes before you need to be at that meeting and 2 hours before you perform. You don't have to decide everything right now. Reba nodded slowly, sinking back into her chair. Can you do something for me? Can you call the hospital and tell them I want updates every 30 minutes? Any change in her condition? Any news from the doctors? I want to know immediately. Of course, I'll set that up right now. Michael picked up his tablet. And Reba? Whatever you decide, whatever you need to do, we'll figure it out. Yes, it will be complicated if you can't perform, but we'll handle it. After Michael left, Reba sat in silence for several minutes, the distant sounds of the stadium coming to life, filtering through her door. She could hear music playing as the sound crew did final checks, voices calling to each other, the rumble of equipment being moved into place. Outside these walls, thousands of people were already arriving, parking in the massive lots, streaming toward the entrances with their tickets and their excitement, expecting a night they'd never forget. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister Susie. Heard about Sarah. I'm so sorry. Call me when you can. Love you. Another buzz. Her son Shelby. Mom, just heard. Are you okay? Do you need me to come to Nashville? Word was spreading. In their tight-knit Oklahoma family circle, news traveled fast. Reba typed quick responses, assuring them she was okay, which was a lie, but a necessary one. She stood and walked to the small window in her dressing room that looked out over a service corridor. From this angle, she could just see a sliver of the stadium seating. Already people were filling in, wearing their cowboy hats and boots, holding up signs with her name, with messages of support for the tornado victims. She saw a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, wearing a shirt that read "Future Queen of Country" being carried on her father's shoulders. That little girl had probably been looking forward to this night for months. Maybe her family had been affected by the tornadoes. Maybe this concert was a bright spot in a season of darkness. Reba pressed her forehead against the cool glass. The weight of responsibility felt like it might crush her. How did you choose between duty and love? How did you calculate the value of one person against the needs of thousands? Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number she didn't recognize. She answered cautiously. "Hello? Ms. McEntire, this is Jennifer Hayes again from Vanderbilt. I wanted to give you an update." Reba's heart lurched. She's stable. No changes, which is actually good news at this stage. But I wanted you to know that she woke up briefly about 5 minutes ago. She was oriented enough to ask about you. She said, there was a pause, the sound of papers rustling. She said, "Tell Reba to go shine. Tell her I'll be here when she's done shining." Tears spilled down Reba's cheeks before she could stop them. That was Sarah. Even lying in an ICU bed, hooked up to machines, she was thinking about Reba's show. "Thank you," Reba managed. "Thank you for calling me." She went back under sedation, but her vitals are holding steady. "I'll call if anything changes." After the nurse hung up, Reba stood holding her phone, Sarah's message echoing in her mind. Go shine. But how could she shine when her heart was breaking? How could she walk onto that stage and be the Reba McEntire everyone expected when all she wanted to do was curl up in a ball and cry? Another knock. "Ms. McEntire, the meeting is starting." Reba wiped her eyes, checked her reflection, and applied fresh lipstick with shaking hands. Her stage makeup was already done. Her outfit, a stunning red and black embroidered jacket with matching pants, hung on the door, ready for showtime. She opened the door and followed the production assistant through the maze of hallways beneath the stadium. The meeting was being held in a large conference room where all the artists, their managers, and the production staff had gathered. The energy in the room was electric, everyone feeding off the excitement of the impending show. Blake Shelton saw her first and crossed the room to give her a hug. "There's the boss lady. You ready to blow the roof off this place?" Reba managed a smile. "Ready as I'll ever be." But as she looked around the room at all the faces, artists who had cleared their schedules for this, crew members who had worked around the clock to make everything perfect, organizers from the relief agencies who were counting on the money this event would raise, she felt the panic rising again, like a tide she couldn't hold back. The event coordinator, Patricia Daniels, called the meeting to order. She ran through the show order, the timing, the cues for when the tornado survivors would be brought on stage to share their stories. Reba was scheduled to close the show, the final performance before the grand finale, when all the artists would come back out for a group performance of Amazing Grace. "This is going to be historic," Patricia said, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "We've already raised $3 million. And that's before tonight's donations during the live stream. Every single person in this room should be proud. You're changing lives tonight." Reba felt Michael's eyes on her. She kept her expression neutral, nodding along with Patricia's words, but inside she was drowning. The meeting broke up, artists dispersing to their dressing rooms. Alan Jackson appeared at her elbow as she turned to leave. "Reba, got a minute?" His voice was quiet, meant just for her. Alan Jackson was country music royalty in his own right, a peer who had traveled the same roads, played the same venues, navigated the same industry challenges for decades. They'd known each other for over 30 years, had mutual respect born from shared experience. "Sure, Alan," she said, letting him guide her to a quieter corner of the hallway. He studied her face with the kind of attention that came from really knowing someone. "You're not okay. I can see it." What's going on? For some reason, the kindness in his voice, the genuine concern, made her defenses crumble. My best friend Sarah is in the ICU at Vanderbilt. Heart attack. She's critical. And I'm supposed to go out there and perform like everything is fine. Alan nodded slowly, processing this information. How long have y'all been friends? 61 years, since we were kids in Oklahoma. And she's alone at the hospital? Her children are trying to get here, but they won't make it until tomorrow. Alan was quiet for a moment. That thoughtful silence that meant he was actually considering the situation rather than just waiting to offer platitudes. What does your gut tell you to do? My gut tells me to go to the hospital, but my head knows that 75,000 people are counting on me, not to mention all the artists and crew and the families who need this money. Reba's voice was barely above a whisper. I feel like I'm being torn in half. Has she sent any message? Reba nodded. The nurse called. Sarah woke up briefly and said to tell me to go shine, that she'd be here when I was done shining. Alan smiled slightly. Sounds like a good friend. The best. Then you already know what you're going to do, Alan said. You're going to honor her request, but that doesn't mean you have to do it alone. He glanced at his watch. Look, I'm on at 7:15. You're not on until 9:30. That gives us some time. Let me think about something, okay? Trust me on this. Before Reba could ask what he meant, he was walking away, pulling out his phone and making a call. Reba returned to her dressing room, feeling slightly less alone, but no less anxious. She tried to warm up her voice, running through scales, but kept stopping, distracted. She checked her phone obsessively, waiting for updates from the hospital. At 5:45 p.m., an hour before the show started, Michael appeared with an update. Sarah is still stable, no improvements but no decline either. The doctors are cautiously optimistic that she'll make it through the next critical period. Cautiously optimistic, Reba repeated. That's not exactly comforting. It's better than the alternative, Michael said gently. Do you want me to arrange a car to take you to the hospital after your performance? You could be there by 10:15. Reba nodded. Yes, do that. Even if I can only sit with her for a few hours, I need to be there. As 6 p.m. approached, Reba could hear the roar of the crowd as the stadium filled to capacity. The opening video montage was playing on the massive screens, showing the devastation from the tornadoes, interspersed with images of communities coming together, rebuilding, supporting each other. The crowd's energy was palpable, even from the backstage area. She changed into her performance outfit, her hands still trembling slightly as she fastened the buttons. Her hair and makeup team came in for final touches. Everyone was cheerful, excited, completely unaware of the storm raging inside her. At 6:45, 15 minutes before the show started, there was a soft knock on her door. When she opened it, she found Alan Jackson standing there with a serious expression. Can we talk? He asked. I have an idea, but I need your permission to make it happen. Reba stepped aside to let Alan into her dressing room, closing the door behind him. He moved with the unhurried confidence of someone who had performed on stages like this hundreds of times, but there was an urgency in his eyes that told her whatever he'd been thinking about earlier had solidified into something concrete. What kind of idea? Reba asked, gesturing for him to sit on the leather couch against the wall. She remained standing, too restless to sit, too anxious to fully focus. Alan settled onto the couch, his tall frame folding into the seat as he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I've been thinking about your situation with Sarah, about what you're feeling, and I remembered something from about 15 years ago. Maybe you don't remember this, but I do. Reba shook her head slightly, confused. What are you talking about? 2011. I was going through that diagnosis with Charcot-Marie tooth disease, the nerve disorder. He saw recognition flash across her face. You called me every single week for months. Not for publicity, Not because someone told you to. You just called to check on me, to talk, to make sure I was okay. When I had to cancel that tour, you were one of 3 people in this industry who sent me a personal message telling me to take all the time I needed, that my health mattered more than any show. Reba did remember, though she'd never thought of it as anything extraordinary. You were going through something terrible. Of course I called. Most people didn't, Alan said simply. Most people sent a generic message through a publicist or didn't reach out at all, but you showed up for me when I needed it, and tonight I want to show up for you. Alan, I appreciate that, but I don't see how— He held up a hand. Let me finish. Here's what I'm proposing. I go on at 7:15 as scheduled, but instead of my normal set, I extend it. I've already talked to Patricia and the production team. They're on board. I'll perform for 90 minutes instead of 45. That pushes everything back. Reba's brow furrowed. But that would throw off the whole schedule. My slot would move to after 10. The finale wouldn't happen until after 11. Exactly, which means 2 things. Alan stood now, pacing as he explained his plan. First, it gives Sarah more time to stabilize. The nurse said the next few hours are critical. If I extend my set, that's 90 minutes more for her to get past the danger point. And second, he paused, making sure he had her full attention. It gives you permission to be human. What do you mean? Reba, everyone in this building, the artists, the crew, the audience, they all love you. You're country music royalty. You've been doing this for 45 years. You've earned the right to have a moment of vulnerability, to let people see that you're struggling. Right now, you're trying to paste on a smile and perform like nothing's wrong. But what if we told people the truth? Reba felt her heart start to race. Tell them about Sarah? Yes, during my set, I'll tell the story. Not all the details, but enough that people understand. I'll tell them that country music's queen is backstage dealing with a family emergency, that your best friend is in the hospital, and that you're torn between being here for this cause and being there for her. I'll tell them that Sarah asked you to go shine, and then— He met her eyes directly. I'll ask this crowd of 75,000 people to help carry you through this night. Tears sprang to Reba's eyes immediately. Alan, I can't ask them to— You're not asking, I am. And trust me, they'll respond. You know why? Because everyone in that stadium has had a moment like this. Everyone has faced an impossible choice between duty and love. They'll understand. And when you finally come out to perform, after they've had time to send prayers and good energy towards Sarah, after they understand what you're walking through, they won't just be an audience, they'll be family. Reba sank into her chair, overwhelmed by the generosity of what he was offering. Why would you do this? Your set is perfectly planned. You'd be changing everything. Alan shrugged. Because songs are just songs, Reba. I've sung them 1,000 times. I'll sing them 1,000 more. But moments like this, where we can actually help each other carry the weight, those are rare. Those matter. He checked his watch. I need your answer quick, though. If we're doing this, I need to rearrange my set list, and Patricia needs to alert the broadcast team about the timing change. Reba wiped her eyes, smudging her makeup slightly. What if Sarah gets worse during the show? What if I get a call that— Then we handle it. I'll be watching you from the side stage during your performance. If you need to leave, you leave. I'll go back out, I'll explain to the crowd, and we'll adjust. But Reba, here's what I know about you. You're strong enough to hold it together even when it's hard. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let other people help carry the load. There was another knock on the door. Michael's voice came through. Reba, they're starting in 5 minutes. They need you on the side stage for the opening. Reba looked at Alan, searching his face for any sign of doubt about his plan. She found none. Okay, she said finally. Okay, let's do it. But are you sure the production team is okay with this? It's going to mess up the whole television schedule. Patricia said the live stream is flexible. They'd rather have an authentic, emotional show that runs long than a perfectly timed show where you're falling apart. And honestly, Alan smiled, I think this is going to be something special, something people talk about for years. Michael opened the door, his expression confused when he saw Alan there. What's going on? Alan stood, moving toward the door. Change of plans. I'm extending my set to 90 minutes. Reba's slot is moving to 10:15. Can you make sure she has water, throat lozenges, and anything else she needs? And keep her updated on Sarah every 30 minutes, like clockwork. Michael looked at Reba for confirmation. She nodded. Do it. And Michael, thank you for everything today. After both men left, Reba sat alone for a moment, letting the new reality settle over her. She felt something shift inside her chest. Not the panic that had been consuming her, but something closer to hope. Maybe she could do this. Maybe, with help, she could honor both Sarah and these 75,000 people who had come to make a difference. She fixed her makeup, checked her appearance one final time, and headed out into the hallway. The path to the side stage took her through the backstage maze, past dressing rooms where other artists were warming up, past equipment cases and busy crew members making last-minute adjustments. The opening act was already in progress when she reached the side stage area. Carrie Underwood was performing, her powerful voice soaring over the crowd, the stadium lights creating a spectacular display against the darkening Tennessee sky. The sun had finally begun to set, cooling the temperature slightly, and the first stars were appearing overhead. Reba stood in the wings, watching the massive crowd. The stadium was packed wall to wall with people. Signs waved in the air, Nashville strong, rebuild with love, country cares. She saw families clustered together, groups of friends singing along, couples with their arms around each other. 75,000 individual lives, each carrying their own stories, their own struggles, their own reasons for being here tonight. Patricia Daniels appeared beside her with a headset and clipboard. Alan just filled me in on the plan. Are you okay with this? I want to make sure you're comfortable with him sharing your situation with the audience. Reba nodded. I trust Alan. If he thinks this is the right approach, I'm willing to try it. For what it's worth, I think it's brilliant, Patricia said. People connect with authenticity. They want to know that their heroes are human too. And the way Alan described it, this becomes a story about community and support, which is exactly what tonight is supposed to be about anyway. Carrie finished her set to thunderous applause. The next artist, Luke Combs, took the stage. Reba watched from the wings for a few minutes, but her mind kept drifting to the hospital across town. She pulled out her phone and texted Michael, "Any updates from Vanderbilt?" His response came quickly. "No changes. Still stable. Next check-in at 7:30. Stable. That word had become a lifeline. As long as Sarah was stable, there was hope. At 7:10, Alan appeared beside her, his guitar slung over his shoulder. He'd changed into a black shirt and jeans, his signature white cowboy hat sitting perfectly on his head. He gave her a reassuring smile. "Ready?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," Reba replied. "Alan, I don't know how to thank you for this. Thank me by giving the performance of your life when your time comes. That's all the thanks I need." He adjusted his guitar strap. "And Reba, Sarah's going to be okay. I got a feeling about it." Then he was being called to the stage entrance. Reba watched as he walked out into the lights, the crowd erupting in cheers. His name flashed across the massive screens flanking the stage. Alan Jackson. "Good evening, Nashville." Alan's voice boomed across the stadium, met with a roar of approval. "Y'all ready to do some good tonight?" More cheers, more applause. Reba could see the crowd's energy from where she stood, could feel it vibrating through the stadium infrastructure. Alan launched into Chattahoochee, one of his biggest hits. The crowd sang along immediately, 75,000 voices joining his in a moment of pure joy. Reba found herself swaying slightly to the music, temporarily distracted from her worry. He performed "It's 5 o'clock somewhere," then "Remember When," his voice carrying the emotional weight that had made him a legend. After the third song, he paused, taking a long drink of water while the crowd cheered. "Y'all sound good tonight," he said, smiling. "I mean really good. That's important because I'm going to need your help with something." The crowd quieted slightly, curious. "Before I go any further, I want to talk to you about someone. Someone who's supposed to be here tonight, and she is here, but she's going through something difficult." Alan's tone shifted, becoming more serious, more intimate. "I'm talking about Reba McEntire." The crowd erupted at her name, cheers and applause washing over the stadium. Reba felt tears prick her eyes again. Alan waited for the noise to settle. "Now I know y'all love Reba. Hell, everybody loves Reba. She's country music royalty. She's a legend, and she's also one of the kindest, most genuine people I've ever known in this industry." He paused, letting that sink in. But right now, at this very moment, Reba's best friend, a woman she's known for 61 years, is in the ICU at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. She had a heart attack this afternoon. She's critical, but stable. The crowd's energy shifted immediately. Reba could hear the collective gasp, could feel the concern rippling through the stadium. Now, Reba being Reba, her first instinct was to drop everything and go to the hospital, because that's who she is. She shows up for people. But her friend Sarah, that's her name, Sarah Bennett, Sarah sent a message to Reba from her hospital bed. You want to know what she said? The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. She said, "Tell Reba to go shine. Tell her I'll be here when she's done shining." Alan let that land. That's the kind of friendship we're talking about. That's the kind of love that makes you tell your best friend to keep her commitment even when you're lying in an ICU bed. Reba pressed her hand to her mouth, overcome with emotion. She saw several crew members nearby wiping their own eyes. "So here's what I'm thinking," Alan continued. "Reba's going to perform for you tonight. She's going to close this show like she's supposed to, but I think she could use some help. I think she needs to feel 75,000 people holding her up, sending good energy to her friend Sarah, showing her that she's not alone in this." He paused. "Can y'all do that for her?" The response was instantaneous and overwhelming. The crowd erupted not in celebratory cheers, but in a sustained roar of support and love. People held up their phone lights, creating a sea of illumination across the stadium. Reba could see people embracing, could see tears on faces in the front rows that were visible from her vantage point. Alan waited for the roar to fade slightly. "Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to play for a while longer tonight. I'm going to keep you company, keep this good energy flowing. And while I do that, I want every single person in this stadium to take a moment. Whether you pray, whether you meditate, whether you just send good thoughts, I want you to direct that energy towards Sarah Bennett at Vanderbilt Hospital. And then, when Reba comes out here later tonight, I want you to show her the kind of support that only country music fans can provide. Can you do that?" "Yes!" The word came back from 75,000 throats simultaneously, so loud that Reba felt it in her chest. Alan launched into "Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning," his song about 9/11 and coming together in times of crisis. It was perfect for the moment, and the crowd swayed as one, phone lights still up, creating a breathtaking visual. Patricia appeared at Reba's side again. "Girl, there's not a dry eye in this building, including mine." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "You've got an army out there now. They're with you." Reba couldn't speak. She just nodded, watching Alan work the crowd with the skill of a master, keeping the energy supportive but not maudlin, hopeful but not dismissive of the seriousness of the situation. Michael found her 20 minutes later with an update. "Called Vanderbilt. Sarah's vitals have actually improved slightly in the last hour. The doctors are saying it's a very positive sign. She's not out of the woods, but she's moving in the right direction." "Oh, thank God," Reba breathed. Thank God. There's more, Michael said. The hospital said they've been getting calls, dozens of them, from people saying they're at the concert and they're praying for Sarah Bennett. The nurses wanted you to know that Sarah might not be conscious, but she's certainly not alone. She's got 75,000 people pulling for her. Reba laughed through her tears. That's insane. That's absolutely insane and wonderful. That's country music, Michael said with a smile. That's the family you've built over 45 years. Out on stage, Alan was performing Drive for Daddy Jean, another song about loss and love and family. The crowd sang every word with him, and Reba realized that what was happening tonight transcended just a benefit concert. This was becoming a moment of genuine human connection, the kind that reminded you why music mattered in the first place. She stayed in the wings for most of Alan's extended set, watching him masterfully navigate between upbeat songs that kept the energy high and emotional ballads that acknowledged the weight of what everyone was experiencing. He told stories between songs, some funny, some touching, all designed to create intimacy with the massive crowd. At one point, he brought out Blake Shelton for an impromptu duet. Blake hadn't been scheduled to perform with Alan, but the flexibility of the moment allowed for spontaneous magic. The two of them sang "Don't Rock the Jukebox," and the stadium erupted with joy. At 8:45, during another water break, Alan addressed the crowd again. "Y'all have been incredible tonight. Thank you for being part of something special. Now we've still got some time before Reba comes out, and I've got some more songs I want to share with you. But I want to give you another update. I just got word from backstage that Sarah Bennett's condition has improved. She's showing positive signs of recovery." The cheer that went up was deafening. People jumped to their feet, hugging each other, celebrating as if they personally knew Sarah. In a way, through Alan's storytelling and Reba's presence in their lives over decades, maybe they did. Reba felt something break open inside her. Not the panic from earlier, but a rush of gratitude so powerful it almost knocked her over. She gripped the railing in front of her, steadying herself, and for the first time since that phone call 6 hours ago, she felt like maybe everything would actually be okay. Alan finished his set at 9:10 with Small Town Southern Man, bringing his performance full circle to themes of community and connection. The crowd gave him a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. He took his bows, waved, and headed off stage. As he passed Reba in the wings, he paused. "You're up next, after a couple of quick sets from other artists. You ready?" Reba grabbed his hand, squeezed it tight. "Thank you, Alan. I mean it. Thank you." "Go shine," he said, echoing Sarah's words. "That's all you got to do now." The next 45 minutes passed in a blur. Miranda Lambert performed a short but powerful set, followed by Chris Stapleton, whose soulful voice seemed to reach into every corner of Nissan Stadium. The energy in the crowd remained electric, but there was an added layer of anticipation now. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone knew who was about to take the stage. Reba spent those 45 minutes in her dressing room doing vocal warm-ups and trying to center herself. Michael provided another update at 9:30. Sarah remained stable, vitals continuing to improve, doctors now cautiously optimistic that she would make a full recovery given time and proper treatment. Her son David got an earlier flight, Michael added. He'll be landing at Nashville International in about 2 hours. He asked if you could stop by the hospital after the show. "Absolutely," Reba said without hesitation. "I'll be there." At 10:05, Patricia knocked on her door. "You're up in 10 minutes, Reba. How are you feeling?" Reba checked her reflection one final time. Her makeup had been touched up twice during the evening. Her hair still looked perfect despite the humidity, and her red and black outfit sparkled under the lights. She looked like the queen of country. Now she just had to remember how to be her. "I'm ready," she said. and was surprised to find that it was true. The walk from her dressing room to the stage entrance seemed longer than usual. Her heart pounded in her chest, but it was different from the paralyzing panic of earlier. This was performance anxiety mixed with gratitude, nerves mixed with determination. She could do this. She would do this. Patricia walked beside her, giving last-minute reminders. You're doing your normal 5-song set. Start with Fancy, then Is There Life Out There? Does He Love You? The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, and close with Consider Me Gone. Unless you want to change anything. No, that's perfect, Reba said. Those songs represented different phases of her career, different aspects of her artistry. They told a story. They reached the side stage area. She could hear Chris Stapleton finishing his set, his final notes echoing across the stadium. The crowd was roaring their approval. Blake Shelton appeared beside her, having watched from the audience area. There she is. How you holding up, superstar? Better than I was 6 hours ago, Reba admitted. Alan really came through. That he did. And now it's your turn to show these folks why you're the queen. Blake kissed her cheek. Knock 'em dead. Chris Stapleton exited the stage to thunderous applause, passing Reba in the wings. He gave her a quick hug. All yours, legend. Go show them how it's done. Patricia handed Reba her microphone, checking to make sure it was live. Remember, they're with you. They're all with you. The stage went dark. The crowd noise built in anticipation. Reba could hear her name being chanted, Reba, Reba, Reba. The video screens flanking the stage began showing a montage of her career highlights. Grainy footage from early performances in the 1970s, her breakthrough moments in the 1980s, her evolution into a superstar in the 1990s and beyond. The crowd cheered louder with each image. Then the announcer's voice boomed across the stadium. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for. The queen of country music, the legend herself, please welcome to the stage, Reba McEntire. The crowd erupted, the stage exploded with light, and Reba stepped out into the brightness. The roar that greeted her was unlike anything she'd experienced in 45 years of performing. It wasn't just applause or cheering, it was an outpouring of love, support, and communal energy. 75,000 people on their feet, screaming her name, holding up signs, phone lights creating a sea of illumination that stretched as far as she could see. She walked to center stage, overwhelmed by the response. She stood there for a long moment, just taking it in, letting herself feel held by this massive community. Tears streamed down her face, and she didn't even try to hide them. Finally, she raised her hand, asking for quiet. It took nearly a minute for the crowd to settle down enough for her to speak. She stopped, her voice cracking. She took a breath, tried again. I don't even know what to say right now. Y'all have me completely overwhelmed. More cheers, more applause. I want to thank Alan Jackson for what he did tonight, Reba continued, her voice growing stronger. For sharing my story, for asking y'all to support not just me, but my friend Sarah. I got word about 20 minutes ago that she's continuing to improve. The doctors think she's going to make it through this. The cheer was deafening. Reba laughed through her tears. And I truly believe, with everything in me, that your prayers, your good thoughts, your energy, all of it reached across this city to that hospital room. Because that's what country music is about, isn't it? It's about family. It's about showing up for each other. It's about knowing that we don't have to face the hard stuff alone. She paused, looking out across the stadium. I almost didn't perform tonight. I was backstage, paralyzed with fear and guilt, thinking I had to choose between being here with you and being there with her. But Sarah sent me a message. She told me to come shine. And what I realize now is that I'm not shining alone up here. I'm shining because of you, because you're holding me up, because 75,000 people decided to carry me through the hardest day I've had in a very long time. Reba wiped her eyes, smudging her mascara but not caring. So this performance tonight? This isn't me singing for you. This is us singing together. This is all of us shining for Sarah and for every family that lost something in those tornadoes, and for anyone out there who's going through something difficult and needs to know that they're not alone. She turned to her band, giving them the signal. Let's do this. The opening notes of Fancy began, that iconic song about a woman rising from poverty through sheer determination. Reba had sung it thousands of times, but tonight, every word felt new, felt urgent, felt like a declaration of resilience. I might have been born just plain white trash, but Fancy was my name. The crowd sang along, and Reba could feel their energy lifting her, carrying her forward. Her voice rang out clear and strong, all the emotion of the day channeling into her performance. By the time she hit the final chorus, she was no longer thinking about Sarah in the hospital or the panic from earlier. She was fully present in the moment, in the music, in the connection with this massive audience. The song ended to massive applause. Without pausing, the band launched into Is There Life Out There, a song about a woman seeking more than what society expected of her. Again, the crowd sang every word, and Reba fed off their energy. She was halfway through Does He Love You, a duet she performed with a video recording of Linda Davis on the screens, when she noticed movement in her peripheral vision. Michael was standing at the edge of the stage, signaling her. She felt a spike of anxiety. Was it bad news about Sarah? But Michael was smiling. He held up his phone, showing her a text message. Even from the stage, she could read it. Sarah is awake and watching the live stream. She says to tell you that you're shining. Reba's voice caught for just a moment, emotion overwhelming her. But she pushed through, finishing the song with renewed power. As the final notes faded, she walked to the edge of the stage, addressing the crowd again. I just got word that Sarah is awake and watching this live stream. She says I'm shining. Reba smiled through happy tears. But I told her later, and I'm telling all of you now, I'm shining because we're all shining together. That's the power of this community. For the night the lights went out in Georgia, Reba gave everything she had. The song's dramatic story matched the emotional intensity of the evening, and she performed it with a passion that reminded everyone why she'd remained relevant for more than 4 decades. Finally, she came to her closing song, Consider Me Gone. It was a song about leaving, about moving forward, but tonight it felt more like a song about survival, about making it through the dark times and coming out stronger on the other side. As she sang the final chorus, the entire stadium joined her. 75,000 voices united in one powerful moment. Phone lights swayed back and forth, creating waves of illumination. The video screens showed crowd shots, families singing together, couples embracing, individuals with their eyes closed and hands raised, lost in the music. Reba held the final note, letting it soar across the stadium, pouring every ounce of emotion from this impossible day into that one sustained sound. When it finally ended, the silence lasted just a heartbeat before the crowd erupted. She took her bows, blowing kisses to the audience, trying to capture mental snapshots of this moment so she could remember it forever. This was why she dedicated her life to music. This was why it mattered. But she wasn't done yet. As the applause continued, she raised her hand again for quiet. I know I'm supposed to exit now, and we're supposed to move on to the finale. But if y'all will indulge me, there's one more thing I need to do. The crowd settled, curious. Tonight was supposed to be about raising money for families who lost everything in those tornadoes. That's still what tonight is about. But it's also become about something bigger, about community, about supporting each other, about being there when it matters most. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I'm going to make a personal donation of $500,000 to the relief fund. Gasps and cheers erupted across the stadium. But more than that, Reba continued, I'm challenging everyone watching this live stream, everyone here in this stadium, to think about how you can show up for someone in your life who needs support. Maybe it's a friend going through a health crisis, like Sarah. Maybe it's a neighbor who lost their home. Maybe it's just someone who needs to know that they're not alone. This night has reminded me that we're strongest when we're together. So let's take that energy beyond this stadium, beyond this concert, and into our daily lives. She looked out across the sea of faces, feeling a connection so profound it was almost spiritual. Thank you for carrying me through this night. Thank you for shining with me. And thank you for reminding me why I fell in love with country music in the first place. Because it's not just about the songs, it's about the people. With that, she took one final bow and exited the stage. As soon as she was in the wings, her legs nearly gave out. Patricia caught her, supporting her weight. "You did it," Patricia said. "My God, Reba, that was incredible." Reba was shaking, adrenaline and emotion coursing through her system. "I need to get to the hospital now. Is the car ready?" "Already waiting," Michael said, appearing at her other side. "But you need to take 5 minutes. Drink some water, catch your breath. The finale isn't for another 20 minutes anyway." They guided her back to her dressing room. She collapsed into her chair, suddenly exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. She'd given everything on that stage, had opened herself completely to vulnerability and connection, and now she felt utterly drained. But it was a good exhaustion. A clean exhaustion. The panic and guilt from earlier had been transformed into something purposeful through the alchemy of performance and community support. Blake Shelton stuck his head in the door. "Just wanted to say that was one of the most powerful performances I've ever witnessed. You knocked it out of the park." Other artists followed: Miranda Lambert, Chris Stapleton, Luke Combs, each offering congratulations and support. The parade of well-wishers was touching but also overwhelming. Finally, Michael cleared the room, giving Reba space to decompress. She changed out of her performance outfit into jeans and a simple blouse, removed most of her stage makeup, and let her hair down. She looked more like herself now, less like the polished superstar and more like just Reba. Her phone rang. An unknown number, but instinct told her to answer. "Hello? Reba, this is David Bennett, Sarah's son." "David, oh my God, are you at the hospital? Just landed 20 minutes ago. I went straight from the airport to Vanderbilt. Mom is awake and talking. She's weak, but she's here. She's going to make it." His voice cracked with emotion. "The doctors said the next few hours were critical, and she pulled through. They're moving her out of the ICU into a regular room in the morning." Reba closed her eyes, letting the relief wash over her. "Thank God, oh thank God." "She watched your performance on the live stream," David continued. "She made the nurses put it on the TV in her room. She was crying through the whole thing. Happy tears," she said. "She wants you to know that she's proud of you." "I'm coming to the hospital right now. I should be there in about 20 minutes. "She told me you'd say that," David said with a laugh. "She said to tell you that visiting hours are over and you need to go home and get some rest. She'll still be here in the morning." "David Bennett, I have known your mother for 61 years, and there is no way I'm not coming to that hospital tonight. You tell her I'll be there soon whether she likes it or not." David laughed again. "I'll let her know. And Reba, thank you for the performance, for the donation, for everything. You've always been like family to us." After hanging up, Reba found Michael. "The car still ready? Waiting at the back exit. But don't you want to stay for the finale? All the artists are coming back out for Amazing Grace." Reba shook her head. "They don't need me for that. I did my part. Now I need to go be with my friend." Patricia appeared one last time to give Reba a hug. "You changed a lot of lives tonight. I hope you know that." "Tonight changed my life too," Reba admitted. "Sometimes you need to be reminded what really matters." The path to the back exit took her through the bowels of the stadium, away from the still cheering crowd. She could hear them singing Amazing Grace with all the artists on stage, their voices creating something holy and communal. The night air hit her as she stepped outside, cooler now, refreshing after hours in the climate-controlled backstage areas. A black SUV waited with its engine running. She climbed in, and the driver pulled away from the stadium, heading toward Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Through the window, Reba could see the lights of downtown Nashville glittering against the night sky. The city that had been her home for so many years, the heart of country music, the place where dreams came true and sometimes fell apart. Tonight, it had been the site of one of the most important performances of her career, not because of the technical execution or the size of the crowd, but because of what it represented about vulnerability, community, and the courage to let yourself be held up by others when you couldn't stand alone. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alan Jackson. "Heard Sarah is going to be okay. Told you I had a feeling. Sleep well, friend. You earned it." She typed back, "Thank you for everything tonight. I owe you more than I can say." His response came quickly. "You don't owe me anything. That's what family does." Reba smiled, looking out at the passing lights of Nashville, feeling grateful for this strange, challenging, ultimately beautiful day. In 15 minutes, she'd be at Sarah's bedside. Tomorrow, they'd both wake up to face recovery and rebuilding, Sarah from her heart attack, Reba from the emotional toll of almost losing her. But tonight had proven something important. No one had to face those challenges alone. Whether it was 75,000 people in a stadium or one friend showing up at a hospital, the power of showing up for each other could transform everything. The car turned onto the Vanderbilt campus, approaching the medical center. Reba took a deep breath, preparing herself for whatever came next, knowing that whatever it was, she could handle it. Because that's what country music had taught her over 4.5 decades. You show up, you sing your truth, and you let the people who love you help carry you through. The fluorescent lights of Vanderbilt University Medical Center's main lobby created a stark contrast to the theatrical glow of the stadium Reba had left behind. At 11:47 p.m., the hospital had settled into its nighttime rhythm, quieter than during the day, but never truly silent. Nurses moved through hallways with practiced efficiency, monitoring equipment beeped steadily from various rooms, and the occasional intercom announcement broke through the low hum of medical machinery. Reba approached the reception desk, suddenly aware of how she must look. She'd removed most of her stage makeup and changed clothes, but there was still glitter in her hair from the performance, and she probably smelled like a mixture of hairspray and the nervous sweat that came from performing in front of 75,000 people. The receptionist, a young woman named Amanda, according to her name tag, looked up from her computer screen. Recognition flashed across her face immediately. "Ms. McEntire, we've been expecting you. Sarah Bennett's son David called down to let us know you were coming." Amanda stood, coming around the desk. "I just want to say, I was watching the live stream tonight. What you all did for those tornado victims, it was incredible, and I'm so glad Ms. Bennett is doing better." "Thank you, sweetheart," Reba said, touched by the kindness. "Can you tell me how to get to her room?" "She's on the 4th floor, cardiac care unit, room 427. But I should warn you, visiting hours officially ended at 9, and they're usually strict about it up there." "I understand, but I promised Sarah I'd be here, and I don't break promises to my best friend." Amanda smiled. "Let me make a call up there. Give me just a minute." While Amanda spoke quietly into the phone, Reba looked around the lobby. Despite the late hour, there were still people scattered throughout. A man sleeping in one of the chairs, his head tilted at an uncomfortable angle. A young couple huddled together, looking exhausted and worried. An elderly woman slowly making her way toward the exit with a walker. Each person here had their own story, their own crisis or concern that had brought them to this place in the middle of the night. It was humbling, really. A reminder that while 75,000 people had been celebrating at the stadium, life's hardest moments were still unfolding in hospitals and homes across the city. "Okay, you're all set," Amanda said, hanging up the phone. "Jennifer Hayes, the head nurse up there, said she'd meet you at the elevators on the 4th floor. She's the one who's been calling you with updates all evening." "I remember her voice," Reeba said. "Please tell her thank you for everything." The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt longer than it should have. Reeba found herself studying her reflection in the polished metal doors, seeing not the country music legend, but just a woman approaching 71 years old, tired and worried about her friend. The performance high had faded during the car ride, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion and a desperate need to see with her own eyes that Sarah was really okay. The doors opened to reveal a woman in her mid-50s, wearing navy blue scrubs and a warm smile. "Ms. McEntire, I'm Jennifer Hayes. We spoke on the phone several times today. Please call me Reeba." She shook Jennifer's hand. "Thank you so much for keeping me updated. It meant everything." "Of course, and I have to tell you, we've never had anything quite like what happened tonight. We started getting calls around 7:30 from people saying they were at your concert and praying for Sarah. By the end of the night, we'd received over 200 calls. The switchboard was overwhelmed." Jennifer led Reeba down a corridor lined with patient rooms. Sarah was awake for some of that. When we told her what was happening, she just laughed and said, "That's Reeba for you." Never does anything halfway. Reeba felt tears prick her eyes again. "That sounds like her. How is she really? Don't sugarcoat it for me." Jennifer's expression became more serious. "She had a major cardiac event, what we call a STEMI, an ST elevation myocardial infarction. Essentially, one of the major arteries to her heart was completely blocked. She's lucky her neighbor found her when she did. Another 15 minutes, and we might be having a very different conversation." Reeba felt her stomach drop. She'd known it was serious, but hearing the medical details made it viscerally real. "However," Jennifer continued, "she responded extremely well to treatment. We performed an emergency cardiac catheterization, placed a stent to open the blocked artery, and her heart function has stabilized beautifully. With proper medication, cardiac rehabilitation, and some lifestyle modifications, there's every reason to believe she'll make a full recovery. We're moving her to a regular cardiac floor in the morning, which is a very positive sign." They stopped outside room 427. Through the partially open door, Reeba could see medical equipment surrounding a bed, and she could hear the steady beep of a heart monitor. "Her son David is in there with her," Jennifer said quietly. "They've been talking since he arrived. She's tired, but she's been asking for you all evening. Don't stay too long, though. She needs rest to heal." "I understand. Just long enough to see her, to let her know I'm here." Jennifer squeezed Reba's shoulder gently. "She already knows you're here. She's known it all night. That's probably why she's doing so well. She's got something to fight for." Reeba pushed open the door and stepped inside. The first thing she saw was Sarah, propped up slightly in the hospital bed, looking impossibly small and fragile in a way that made Reba's heart ache. Sarah Bennett had always been strong, the kind of woman who could work a full day on the ranch, make dinner for 10 people, and still have energy to stay up late talking about dreams and disappointments. Seeing her like this, with IV lines running into her arms and electrodes attached to her chest, was jarring. But Sarah's eyes, those bright blue eyes that Reeba had known since they were both 9 years old, were alert and focused. When she saw Reeba standing in the doorway, her entire face lit up with a smile. "Well, look who decided to show up," Sarah said, her voice weaker than normal but still carrying that familiar teasing tone. "Shouldn't you be at some fancy after-party right now?" Reeba crossed the room quickly, leaning over the bed to embrace her friend as gently as possible, mindful of all the medical equipment. "Don't you dare!" Don't you dare joke about this, Sarah Bennett. You scared me half to death today. Only half to death? I must be losing my touch. Sarah held on to Reeba with surprising strength for someone who just had a heart attack. I saw your performance. David made the nurses put it on the TV for me. You were magnificent. I was a mess, Reeba said, pulling back slightly but keeping hold of Sarah's hand. I almost didn't go on. I wanted to be here with you. I know you did. That's why I sent you that message. Sarah's expression grew more serious. Reeba, you've been showing up for me for 61 years. I didn't need you to drop everything and rush to a hospital where you couldn't do anything anyway. I needed you to do what you do best, shine. And Lord, did you shine tonight. David Bennett stood from a chair in the corner, coming forward to give Reeba a hug. He was 43, with his mother's blue eyes and his late father's dark hair. She made us replay your final song 3 times, and when you made that donation announcement, she started crying and wouldn't stop for 10 minutes. The nurses thought something was wrong with her vitals. Those were happy tears, Sarah insisted. I'm allowed to be proud of my best friend. Reeba settled into the chair David had vacated, still holding Sarah's hand. How are you feeling? And I want the truth, not the brave face you show everyone. Sarah took a moment before answering. Scared, she admitted. When I woke up in the ambulance and realized what had happened, I was terrified. And then, when they were working on me in the emergency room, when they told me they needed to do the catheterization immediately, I thought about all the things I hadn't said, all the people I hadn't told I loved them. I thought about my kids, about my grandkids, about you. Her voice wavered. I wasn't ready to go, Reeba. I'm still not ready. Then don't you dare go anywhere, Reeba said fiercely. You hear me? We've got too much left to do. We still haven't taken that trip to Ireland we've been talking about for 20 years. We still haven't finished organizing all those old photos from high school. And I still need you to tell me when I'm being ridiculous, because God knows nobody else will. Sarah laughed, then winced slightly. Laughing hurts, note to self. Jennifer poked her head back into the room. Just checking on things. Sarah, how's your pain level? About a 4, Sarah said. Manageable. Let me know if it goes above a 5. We can adjust your medication. Jennifer looked at Reeba. You've got about 10 more minutes, then Miss Bennett really needs to sleep. Doctor's orders. After Jennifer left, David spoke up. I'm going to grab some coffee from the cafeteria. Give you two some privacy. You want anything, Reeba? I'm fine, thank you. Once David left, closing the door behind him, Sarah squeezed Reeba's hand. Tell me about tonight, not the performance, I saw that. Tell me about what Alan Jackson did, about how you felt. So Reeba did. She talked about the panic backstage, about Alan's plan, about standing in the wings and hearing him tell 75,000 people about Sarah's situation. She described the way the crowd responded, the sea of phone lights, the overwhelming sense of being held up by a community of strangers who suddenly didn't feel like strangers at all. I realized something tonight, Reeba said thoughtfully. I've spent 45 years in this industry, and I thought I understood what it meant to connect with an audience. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't just performing for them. I was letting them see me as I really am, scared, vulnerable, human. And instead of being disappointed, they loved me more for it. That's because real connection requires real vulnerability, Sarah said. You can't have one without the other. And Reeba, you've always been real, even when it would have been easier to hide behind the persona. That's why people love you. Alan said something similar, about how everyone in that stadium has faced impossible choices, has had moments where they needed help carrying the weight. He said letting them help me was giving them a gift, not asking for something I didn't deserve. Alan's a wise man. He is. Reeba paused. Sarah, I need to tell you something. When I got that call from Jennifer this afternoon, when she said you were in the ICU, I've never been that scared. Not when I was starting out and didn't know if I'd make it in Nashville. Not during the plane crash that killed my band members. Not during my divorce. Nothing has ever terrified me like the thought of losing you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not going anywhere. The doctors say I'll need some recovery time, some changes in how I live, but I'm going to be fine. And you know what? This whole thing has given me perspective. I've been so focused on all the little stuff, keeping the house perfect, making sure every family event is planned just right, worrying about things that don't really matter. But lying in that ICU bed, I realized that the only things that matter are the people we love and the time we have with them." "So you're saying you're going to finally take some time to relax? Maybe accept help instead of always being the one helping everyone else?" "Don't push it," Sarah said with a weak smile. "Baby steps." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, just being present with each other in the way that only decades-long friendships allow. The heart monitor continued its steady beeping, a reassuring reminder that Sarah was still here, still fighting. "I should let you rest," Reba said reluctantly. "Jennifer's probably going to come in here and kick me out any minute." "Probably. But I'm glad you came. I needed to see you in person, needed to tell you how proud I am of what you did tonight." Sarah's grip on Reba's hand tightened slightly. "And Reba, thank you for all those people who called the hospital, who sent prayers and good thoughts. I could feel it, you know, all that energy, all that love. It helped." "That's what family does," Reba said, echoing Alan's words from earlier. "And you've got a big family, bigger than you probably realized." David returned with his coffee, and Reba knew it was time to go. She kissed Sarah's forehead, promised to come back first thing in the morning, and made David promise to call if anything changed during the night. Jennifer was waiting outside the room. "She's going to sleep well tonight. The crisis has passed, and now it's just a matter of healing and recovery. Thank you for taking such good care of her. And thank you for all those updates you gave me throughout the evening. I don't think I could have performed if I hadn't known she was in good hands. It was my pleasure. And Reba, I grew up listening to your music. My mama played your albums constantly when I was a kid. What you did tonight, raising that money and bringing attention to the tornado relief efforts, that's going to change lives. Never doubt that." The elevator ride back down to the lobby gave Reba a moment to process everything. Sarah was going to be okay. The concert had been a success. The money raised would help families rebuild their lives, and she'd learned something valuable about vulnerability and community and the courage it takes to let yourself be helped. Her phone buzzed with multiple notifications as she exited the hospital. Texts from family members, from other artists, from friends she hadn't heard from in years. Everyone wanted to check on her, to congratulate her on the performance, to express their relief about Sarah. One text stood out from Dolly Parton. "Just watched the live stream recording. That was one of the most powerful things I've ever witnessed. You showed the world what country music is really about. Call me tomorrow. Love you, darling." The SUV was still waiting where she'd left it. The driver opened her door without a word, and they pulled away from the hospital, heading toward Reba's home in the Nashville suburbs. It was after midnight now, June 29th, officially beginning. The streets were quiet, most of the city asleep. Reba leaned her head against the window, watching the familiar landscape pass by, the honky-tonks of Lower Broadway, still lit up and blaring music into the night, the Cumberland River reflecting the city lights, the tree-lined neighborhoods where families slept peacefully. Tomorrow the news would be full of stories about the concert. Social media would be flooded with videos and photos. The amount raised for the Tornado Relief Fund would be calculated and announced. Interviews would be requested. The machinery of publicity and industry response would kick into high gear. But tonight, right now, Reba was just a woman grateful that her best friend was going to live. Everything else was secondary. Her phone rang. Michael's name appeared on the screen. "Hey," she answered, "you still up? Just saw that you left the hospital." How's Sarah? Going to be fine. It was scary, but she's going to recover fully with time and treatment. Thank God. And how are you? Reba considered the question honestly. Exhausted, grateful, changed, I think. Changed how? I spent so many years being strong, being the one everyone could count on, never showing weakness or asking for help. But tonight, I had to let people see me struggling. I had to accept help from Alan, from the crowd, from everyone. And instead of making me weaker, it made everything stronger. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Michael said. That's called growth, Reba. And for what it's worth, I think tonight was the most important performance of your career, not because of the technical aspects, but because of what it represented. Alan said people would talk about this night for years. He's right. But not just because it was a great concert, because it was real. Because 75,000 people got to witness authentic human connection and community support. That's rare. That's special. After promising Michael she'd take tomorrow off to rest, Reba hung up and closed her eyes for the remainder of the drive home. Her house was dark when they arrived, sitting peacefully on its wooded lot. The driver walked her to the door, making sure she got inside safely before departing. Alone in her home, Reba moved through the familiar spaces, turning on lights, checking her messages, going through the automatic rituals of ending a day. But this hadn't been just any day. This had been one of those pivot points, the kind you look back on years later and recognize as a moment when everything shifted. She found herself in her music room, surrounded by awards and photographs documenting 45 years in the industry. There she was with Dolly and Loretta at some awards show in the 80s. There was a photo from her first Grand Ole Opry performance. Pictures of her family, her children, moments of triumph and joy. And there, in a simple frame on the bookshelf, was a photo of her and Sarah from when they were teenagers, standing in front of Sarah's father's truck somewhere in Oklahoma, both of them grinning at the camera with the unself-conscious joy of youth. Two girls who had no idea what life had in store for them, but who faced it together anyway. Reba picked up the photo, studying the faces of those girls. In some ways, she was still that girl, still dreaming, still reaching, still trying to figure out how to navigate a complicated world. But now, she had 6 decades of experience, of lessons learned, of relationships built and maintained. And she had today this impossible, terrible, wonderful day that had taught her more about vulnerability and strength than years of success ever could. She would sleep well tonight, knowing Sarah was safe, knowing she'd honored her commitments, knowing she'd allowed herself to be fully human in front of thousands of people and been embraced rather than rejected for it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to show up for the people and causes that mattered. But tonight, she could rest. Reba set the photo back on its shelf, turned off the lights, and headed upstairs to bed, grateful for friends who tell you to go shine, for strangers who become family when you need them most, and for the resilience of the human heart, both literally and figuratively, to keep beating through the hardest moments. Sunlight streamed through the windows of Reba's bedroom at 7:23 a.m., waking her earlier than she'd planned. For a moment she lay still, disoriented by the sense that something significant had happened, but unable to immediately recall what. Then it all came rushing back. Sarah's heart attack, the concert, the outpouring of support, the late-night hospital visit. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, her body protesting with the kind of soreness that came from hours of intense performance, combined with emotional exhaustion. The screen showed 47 unread text messages, 16 missed calls, and an overwhelming number of notifications from social media. The first text she opened was from David Bennett, sent at 6:15 a.m. Mom had a good night. Slept peacefully. They're moving her to room 612 in the regular cardiac unit around 9. She's asking when you're coming by. Reba smiled, typing back, "Tell her I'll be there by 10, and tell her to stop worrying about entertaining visitors and focus on healing." The next several messages were from family, her son Shelby, her sister Susie, other relatives checking on both Sarah and on Reba herself. She responded to each one briefly, assuring them that everything was okay. But it was the message from Alan Jackson that made her pause. "Morning, friend. Been watching the news coverage. Last count, the concert raised $3 million for tornado relief, more than triple the original goal. Your $500,000 donation inspired others to step up. This is what happens when people decide to show up for each other. Hope you're getting some rest. You earned it." $8 million. Reba sat up in bed, trying to process that number. The original goal had been $2.5 million. Somehow, the events of last night had catalyzed something bigger than anyone had anticipated. She got out of bed and moved to her laptop, opening her browser. The internet had exploded with coverage of the concert. Every major news outlet had stories, not just country music publications, but mainstream media, entertainment networks, even international news sources. Hearts for the Heartland concert raises, record-breaking funds for tornado victims. Reba McEntire's emotional performance highlights power of community support. Alan Jackson's gesture of friendship moves 75,000 fans to tears. When country music shows up, how one concert became a movement. Video clips from the concert were everywhere. Someone had posted Alan's speech about Sarah, and it already had over 3 million views. Another clip showed Reba's opening remarks, her voice cracking with emotion as she thanked the crowd. A third showed the stadium full of phone lights during "Consider Me Gone," creating a breathtaking visual that captured the unity of the moment. The comment sections were overwhelmingly positive. People shared their own stories of facing impossible choices, of being supported through crisis, of experiencing the power of community. What had started as a benefit concert had somehow become a cultural moment. A reminder of what was possible when people chose connection over isolation. Reba's personal social media accounts, which were usually managed by her team, had been flooded with messages from fans. Thousands of people had posted prayers for Sarah, well wishes for Reba, and declarations of how the concert had affected them. One message, from a username she didn't recognize, caught her attention. "My family lost everything in the Alabama tornadoes. My daughter died when our house collapsed. I didn't think I'd ever feel joy again, but watching that concert last night, seeing all those people come together, hearing you talk about choosing to shine even when it's hard, it gave me hope for the first time in months. Thank you for showing us that we're not alone in the darkness." Reba read the message 3 times, tears streaming down her face. This was why it mattered. Not the awards or the chart positions or the record sales. This, the ability to reach across the distance and touch someone's life, to offer hope when hope felt impossible. She showered and dressed in comfortable jeans and a soft blue sweater, applied minimal makeup and pulled her hair back into a simple ponytail. Today wasn't about being the queen of country. Today was about being present for her friend and for herself. The drive to Vanderbilt Medical Center felt different in daylight. The city was awake and bustling, people going about their normal Monday routines, unaware that Reba McEntire was sitting in traffic alongside them. Just another person navigating Nashville's morning rush. Her phone rang as she waited at a red light. The caller ID showed Dolly Parton's name. "Morning, Miss Dolly," Reba answered with a smile. "Well, there she is, the woman of the hour." Dolly's familiar voice was warm and enthusiastic. "Honey, I just had to call and tell you that what you did last night was nothing short of magical. I've been in this business a long time, and I've seen a lot of performances, but that was special. It wasn't just me, Dolly, it was Alan and the crowd and... Oh, I know all that, but you were the heart of it. You had the courage to be vulnerable, to let people see you struggle. That takes more guts than hitting a perfect high note or executing a perfect dance move. That takes real strength. I didn't feel strong. I felt like I was falling apart. That's when we're at our strongest, darling. When we're brave enough to fall apart and trust that someone will catch us. You trusted that audience, and they caught you. That's beautiful. Dolly paused. How's your friend Sarah? She's going to be okay. I'm actually on my way to see her now. Good, you give her my best. And Reba, take some time for yourself too. You can't pour from an empty cup, as they say. Let other people carry you for a little while. After promising to stay in touch, Reba hung up and continued toward the hospital. She stopped at a coffee shop near the medical center, picking up 2 lattes, one for herself and one for David, who had probably been at his mother's bedside all night. The 4th floor of Vanderbilt looked different during the day. More bustling, more staff moving through the corridors, more visitors arriving to check on loved ones. Jennifer Hayes spotted Reba as soon as she stepped off the elevator. "You came back," Jennifer said with a smile. "Somehow I knew you would, even though I told you to rest. How is she this morning?" "Excellent. Her vitals are strong. She ate breakfast, and she's been entertaining the nursing staff with stories about you when you were teenagers. Apparently, there's a tale involving a horse, a county fair, and a very angry pie judge." Reba laughed. "Oh, God, she didn't tell you about that, did she?" "She did. And now I need to know your side of the story. Maybe another time. Can I see her?" Jennifer led her to room 612, a larger and more comfortable space than the ICU room from last night. Sarah was sitting up in bed, looking dramatically better than she had 12 hours ago. Her color had returned, her eyes were bright, and she was laughing at something David was saying when Reba entered. "Finally!" Sarah exclaimed. "I've been up since 6:30 waiting for you. The message said you'd be moved around 9. I timed it perfectly." Reba handed David one of the lattes. "You look like you could use this." "You're a lifesaver," David said gratefully. "I'm going to run home, take a shower, and change clothes. My sister Emily's flight lands at noon, so I'll pick her up and bring her back here. You okay to stay with Mom for a few hours?" "I'm not going anywhere," Reba assured him. After David left, Reba settled into the chair beside Sarah's bed. Her friend looked so much better than last night that it was almost startling, as if the crisis had never happened. But the monitors and IV lines told a different story. "Stop looking at me like I'm going to break," Sarah said. "I feel pretty good, all things considered. The doctor already came by this morning. He says if I continue improving at this rate, I might be able to go home in 3 or 4 days." "That's wonderful news. But you're going to follow every single instruction they give you, right? No deciding you know better than the cardiac specialists?" "Yes, Mother," Sarah said with mock exasperation. Then her expression softened. "Have you seen the news this morning? The amount of money raised? $8 million. I can barely wrap my head around it. 8.3 last I heard, and it's still climbing as more online donations come in." Sarah reached for Reba's hand. "You did that. You and Alan and all those artists, but you were the inspiration behind it. I didn't do anything except almost fall apart backstage. You showed up, even when it was hard, even when you wanted to be somewhere else. You showed up, and then you had the courage to let people help you through it. That inspired them to show up too, with their donations, with their prayers, with their stories. You created a ripple effect of people choosing connection over isolation." Reba was quiet for a moment, considering Sarah's words. "Can I tell you something? I've been successful for a long time. I've had hit songs, won awards, sold out arenas. But last night was the first time in years that I felt like I was doing something that really mattered. Not just entertaining people, but actually connecting with them on a deeper level. That's because you let them see the real you, not the polished performer, but the human being underneath. People are hungry for that kind of authenticity, Reba. We live in a world where everyone's trying to present a perfect image, where vulnerability is seen as weakness. What you did last night was revolutionary. You said, "I'm struggling and I need help," and instead of losing respect, you gained it. A nurse came in to check Sarah's vitals and administer medication. While she worked, Reba walked to the window, looking out over the Nashville skyline. From this height, she could see the sprawl of the city, the downtown buildings, the residential neighborhoods spreading out in all directions, the green spaces that provided relief from the urban density. Somewhere out there were the families who would benefit from last night's fundraising, people who had lost homes, businesses, loved ones in the tornadoes, people who were trying to rebuild their lives from nothing. The money would help, certainly, but Reba hoped that the message of community and support would help even more. The reminder that they weren't alone, that strangers could become family in times of crisis. Her phone buzzed with another text, this time from Patricia Daniels, the event coordinator. "Reba, we need to schedule a press conference for later this week to announce the final donation totals and thank everyone involved. Also, I'm getting calls from multiple charities asking if we'd consider making this an annual event. Can we talk soon?" An annual event. Reba hadn't considered that possibility, but it made sense. Last night had proven that people wanted to come together for good causes, wanted to be part of something larger than themselves. The nurse finished her work and left, promising to check back in an hour. Sarah studied Reba's face. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything. The concert, the response, what comes next." Reba returned to her chair. "Patricia wants to make it an annual event, and honestly, I think we should. Not necessarily on the same scale every year, but some kind of regular fundraiser that brings the country music community together for disaster relief or other causes." "That's a beautiful idea. You could call it the Hearts for Home series or something like that. Different location each year, depending on where help is needed most." They spent the next hour talking through possibilities, their conversation ranging from practical logistics to broader philosophical questions about the role of artists in social causes. It felt good to focus on something positive, to channel the energy from last night into future plans. Around 11, David called to say he'd picked up Emily from the airport and they were on their way to the hospital. Reba took that as her cue to give the family some private time. "I'll come back this evening," she told Sarah, "unless you're tired of seeing me." "Never. But go home, get some real rest. You gave everything last night. You need time to recover too." Reba kissed Sarah's forehead. "I love you, have for 61 years, will for 61 more. I'm going to hold you to that," Sarah said with a smile. As Reba left the hospital, she felt lighter than she had in months. The crisis had passed. Sarah was healing. And somehow, through the crucible of yesterday's fear and uncertainty, something beautiful had emerged. She drove not toward home, but toward downtown Nashville, parking near Lower Broadway. She walked down the famous street where honky-tonks lined both sides, where aspiring musicians played for tips and tourists snapped photos. This was the heart of country music, the place where dreams were born and sometimes shattered. She stopped in front of Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, the legendary bar where she'd performed decades ago when she was just starting out. The purple building looked the same as it had back then, a piece of Nashville history that had witnessed countless careers launch from its small stage. A young woman, maybe 23 or 24, was setting up a microphone on the outdoor stage area. She had a guitar case covered in stickers, and she was dressed in jeans and a vintage Loretta Lynn t-shirt. When she looked up and saw Reba standing there, her eyes went wide. "Oh my God, you're Reba McEntire." "Guilty," Reba said with a smile. "What's your name?" Katie Henderson. I'm from Kentucky. I've been in Nashville for 8 months trying to get my music career going." She seemed to realize she was rambling. "I watched your concert last night, the live stream. It was... God, it was incredible. I cried through your whole set." "Thank you, sweetheart. Are you about to perform?" "Yeah, I've got a 2-hour slot. Probably play for a couple dozen tourists who aren't really listening." She laughed self-deprecatingly. But hey, it's stage time, right? Reba studied the young woman, seeing echoes of her younger self, the hopeful determination, the slight uncertainty beneath the confidence, the hunger to be heard. Can I give you some advice? Are you kidding? Please. Every person you play for matters. Those tourists who might not be paying attention, one of them might become a lifelong fan. Or they might be going through something difficult, and your song might be exactly what they need to hear. Last night, I performed for 75,000 people. This morning, I read a message from one woman whose daughter died in the tornadoes. My performance gave her hope. One person, that's all it takes to matter. Katie's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, I needed to hear that. And one more thing. Don't be afraid to be real. Don't hide behind a persona or try to be what you think the industry wants. The most powerful thing you can do is show people who you really are. That's what creates real connection. They talked for a few more minutes, Reba offering encouragement and practical advice, born from decades of experience. When she finally left, heading back to her car, she felt a sense of completion, the cycle continuing. Wisdom passed down, the next generation stepping up, the music carrying forward. Her phone rang as she reached her car. It was Michael. Hey, I know you're supposed to be resting, but I wanted you to know 3 more major artists have called, saying they want to participate in next year's fundraiser. Luke Bryan, Casey Musgraves, and Chris Stapleton all reached out personally. They said what happened last night reminded them why they got into music in the first place. That's wonderful, Michael. Set up meetings for next week. Let's start planning now while the momentum is strong. Will do. Also, you're trending on every social media platform. The video of your performance has been viewed over 10 million times. Your follower counts have increased by hundreds of thousands since last night. Whatever you did, it resonated. After hanging up, Reba sat in her car for a moment, watching people walk past on Broadway. Families on vacation, bachelorette parties starting their day of bar hopping, musicians carrying instrument cases toward their next gig. Nashville in all its chaotic, beautiful, hopeful glory. She thought about the trajectory of her life, the little girl from Oklahoma who dreamed of singing, the young woman who came to Nashville with determination and talent, the established star who navigated decades of industry changes, and now the legend who had learned that true strength came not from perfection, but from vulnerability. Last night hadn't been perfect. She'd been terrified, had cried, had nearly backed out of her commitment, but by allowing herself to be human, by accepting help from Alan and support from 75,000 strangers, she'd created something more meaningful than any flawless performance could have achieved. Her phone buzzed with one final message for the morning, this one from Alan Jackson. Lunch next week! I think we should talk about doing some co-writing. Last night gave me some ideas. Reba smiled, typing back. Name the time and place. I owe you a meal at the very least. His response came quickly. You don't owe me anything, but I'll take you up on lunch anyway. Friends don't keep score. Friends don't keep score. Reba turned those words over in her mind as she drove home through the Nashville streets. It was true. The best relationships weren't transactional. They were built on showing up, on being present, on offering support without expecting anything in return. Sarah had spent 61 years showing up for Reba. Alan had shown up last night when it mattered most. The crowd at Nissan Stadium had shown up with their prayers and energy and donations. Jennifer Hayes and the medical staff at Vanderbilt had shown up to save Sarah's life. Even young Katie Henderson, performing on Broadway for tourists who might not be listening, was showing up, investing herself in the hope that her music would matter to someone. That was the real lesson of the last 24 hours. We need each other. In a world that often felt divided and isolated, the simple act of showing up for one another was revolutionary. Reba pulled into her driveway, grateful for the quiet that awaited her inside. She would spend the afternoon resting, returning calls, beginning to process everything that had happened. Tonight, she'd visit Sarah again at the hospital. Tomorrow, she'd start planning the next fundraiser, continue building on the momentum of last night's success. But for now, in this moment, she allowed herself to simply be. Not the queen of country music, not a legend, not a public figure with responsibilities and expectations. Just Reeba, a woman who had faced an impossible choice and with help from friends and strangers alike had found a way through it. She thought again of Sarah's message from yesterday. Tell Reeba to go shine. She had gone and shined. And in doing so, she discovered that the brightest light comes not from standing alone, but from standing together. Each person's individual spark combining to create something powerful enough to illuminate even the darkest moments. The afternoon sun streamed through her windows as Reeba settled onto her couch, finally allowing her exhausted body to rest. Her phone continued to buzz with messages, but she ignored it for now. The world could wait a few hours. She closed her eyes, and in the moments before sleep claimed her, she felt profound gratitude for Sarah's recovery, for Alan's friendship, for a community that had rallied when called upon, and for the reminder that even legends need help sometimes. And that asking for that help, accepting that support, wasn't weakness. It was the most human thing any of us could do.